everybody, and apologies, I have to speak through translation, which is why I will stand here and follow my notes closely so the interpreters can do their job efficiently. Thank you for inviting me here. I'm very grateful to Votorantim, ICZ, to invite me to come here. It's a long way, and I hope that my first visit to Brazil will assist in some of the important work that ICZ are doing to promote the use of galvanizing in Brazil. So first I should explain who I am. You had a short introduction. The European General Galvanizers Association is a federation of the many national associations that we have in Europe. These associations are strongly supported by the galvanizing industry, and most of their work is marketing. It is promoting the use of galvanized steel. And my organization, the European Association, acts as a service provider to them and assists them in their work. So we have 14 member associations covering 21 countries in Europe, and our offices are based near London in the UK. General galvanizing in Europe has followed a steady and growing trend. Of course, like everybody, when we reached 2008, we had a decline, a little setback from the economic crisis, but I'm pleased to say that now we have returned to growth. 2010, we grew again 6% in Europe. These figures cover our member countries, and as Dr. Goodwin said this morning, if you add the figures for Poland, Baltic states, and some other European countries, Turkey, our total is around 7.5 million tons in the whole of Europe. The European production or throughput of batch galvanizing is dominated by these 5 countries, France, UK and Ireland, Spain, Italy and Germany, and together they comprise nearly 80% of the total. Although the industry is growing quite quickly in Eastern Europe, so this picture is changing slowly. If we look at kettle capacity, so the volume of galvanizing baths in Europe, actually this has not declined. We have continued to build new capacity in Europe. We have adjusted to the downturn by changing the shift patterns, by reducing the number of hours that we are operating our plants, but the capacity actually has continued to grow. So we're ready for economic recovery in steel construction in Europe. Our market segmentation, I think this is a rather common picture across all European countries. This is the total, the average, but in each country the picture is largely the same, and the most important thing to see here is that building and construction is very dominant in Europe. And this is why, of course, we are very focused on the architect and general construction. Between building and construction and street furniture, this is around 60% of the total. In a mature market, and in Europe we do have a mature market, we have turned to the use of galvanized steel in architecture to break new ground and to find new growth. I think earlier this morning it was mentioned that transmission towers comprise 20% of your market in Brazil. I think in Europe we don't really speak about transmission towers now. I would be surprised if it's 1% of the total. So we have to find new products and break away from these old traditional markets of transmission towers. So over the past 20 years, the use of galvanized steel by architects has driven most of the growth in our industry. And I just put here some little thought starters with the reasons why this has been. First, we have had a recognition, and I will show you some examples, that galvanized steel, it has a fashionable appearance. You see, this is nothing to do with corrosion protection. We have had an increasing cost of paint to the point that galvanizing is no longer has to be justified on a life cycle basis, and in fact, for many projects, the cost of batch galvanizing can be very similar to the cost of painting. There has also been a focus on life cycle costing and a recognition that corrosion costs governments a lot of money. And we have also had a very strong promotional effort by associations in Europe. And just for an example, I think the market production in the UK is now rather similar to the total in Brazil. In the UK, we have 10 full-time staff working to promote galvanizing and provide technical support to architects, to engineers, and to the industry. We have a similar situation in Germany, where we have, I think, now 11 or 12 people just working in the association. That's enough words and statistics. What I was asked to do, and it's actually a pleasure, is to show you some examples. So I will start first with industrial buildings, but industrial buildings where architects have been very involved. The first of these is the Fisherman's Wharf project in Pontevedra on the north coast of Spain in Galicia. This was the winner of our 2009 European Galvanizing Awards. It's a multifunctional unit built for the local fishermen with the galvanized steel lattice structures and galvanized steel plates. As engineers, we would like the main reason for using galvanizing here to be corrosion protection. But I can tell you that when the architects made their acceptance speech for our awards, they told us that the main reason for using galvanizing was the similarity between the color of the grey skies in this region and the color of the finish. It's always difficult for engineers to understand architects, but if they use galvanizing, we didn't care. Another completely different project. This is a small animal hospital, a veterinary hospital in Scotland by Archeal Architects. It won the 2009 Royal Institution of Architects in Scotland Award for the best building in Scotland in the UK. It was said to be unique and ingenious. It's situated near Glasgow. You can see that for all of the steelwork, every effort was made to use batch galvanizing. Much attention to the details. It was singled out as a very complex piece of architecture. It's 4,500 square meters of building, and it was praised for the relationship between the landscape, the area, and the building itself. The judges from the competition said this building was set unobtrusively into its setting, with a large grassed roof setting into the hillside within the landscape. So it's a highly complex piece of architecture and sets new standards for designs in veterinary medicine. These were the words of the judges. It's also been important in Europe to break from industrial buildings, which again have been mainly a traditional market, to residential buildings. And I think one very common use now of galvanized steel in Europe is in low-cost social housing. This is the Home Estate near Manchester in the UK, and it's a good example of the use of galvanized steel for a community that does not want and does not have the money to maintain this building in the future. So a lot of investment is given by the local government at the first stage in galvanized steel to avoid future maintenance costs. So galvanizing was used here particularly in conjunction with wood, and this is again another popular combination for architects, a fashionable combination of wood and galvanized steel. This is a social care facility in Prague, in the Czech Republic, another project from our 2009 awards. It accommodates 60 senior citizens or pensioners for their daytime activities. They go there during the day. And galvanized steel was used extensively throughout the project to enhance the appearance, but again also to reduce maintenance costs. This is another project where the future costs of maintenance have to be minimized, so they can maximize the care for the resources for the care of the pensioners and not waste it on maintenance. Galvanized steel was not only used in the building, but it was also used to improve the architectural face of the building, including the galleries, the passageways, and also the architecture in the gardens. Another residential project. This is a small mixed-use project on the south side of the River Thames. It's called Heron Court. It's an area which in fact has a high risk of flooding. It's in a low area, and this project put the residential areas at the first floor, and then warehousing and storage areas in the areas which were vulnerable to flooding. It comprises 12 apartments above the ground floor, and the structure is a light galvanized steel frame, but batch galvanized, not continuous galvanizing, in combination again with wood. This project is called the VM Housing. It's in the Orestad area of Copenhagen in Denmark. It was one of their first large residential projects to improve this rundown, poor area of Copenhagen suburbs, creating over 200 apartments. Each apartment has this triangular balcony where galvanized steel is used extensively in these tapered balconies, but also in other areas of the project. We have seen in Europe many of our educational buildings for schools and universities, many of our buildings reach the end of their useful life and become rather inefficient, and we've had a lot of investment in educational buildings in Europe, especially in the UK and in Germany. This is the University of Applied Sciences in Aalen in Germany. This is one of 3 buildings which were built to extend the Faculty of Applied Sciences. They have a striking wooden slatted appearance in combination again with a batch galvanized frame. And the architects are very proud of this gentle shimmer or relationship between the galvanized steel and the smoothness of the wooden slats. It's said to give a very welcoming appearance. Students like to be welcomed to their buildings, apparently. Have to treat students very carefully. So they create a welcoming appearance to the building. But the durability and the reliability were also very important, again, in educational buildings. This Werner von Siemens School in Bochum in Germany is quite an exciting new use of galvanized steel plates. It's a bold use of galvanized steel in architecture. Each of these plates measures about 2.7 meters by 1 meter and 3 millimeters thick. And we've seen many similar designs now. After this design, many architects have copied this. I have seen similar buildings in the Nordic countries now. And these projects, the galvanizers here will know, these projects place the highest demands on quality from our industry and require a very close collaboration between the architect, the steel constructor and the galvanizer to be sure that we deliver the surface finish that is required for these high-profile projects. Another educational example, this is a new covered play area for an Anglo-Spanish school in London, in the west of London, providing a covered play area for the school. The coating again gives a zero-cost maintenance and resists, of course, the day-to-day wear of a school playground where things are constantly being banged into the structure. And actually this robustness, the toughness and abrasion resistance of galvanized steel is very important in these types of applications. Another one which I've always liked, this is a gate school gates, which was designed by the pupils and then manufactured by a local company. But you can imagine, yes, it's very attractive, but this provides a very tough and abrasion-resistant finish for gates. Gates, I think, are a very good example of products that do not work very well with paint. I've shown you quite a lot of small buildings, and I'm sure you're thinking, well, we don't need many of these to keep galvanizing plants busy. So let me turn now to some other new uses of galvanizing in Europe, which is in exhibition centres. This is the Eden project. It's a big environmental visitor attraction in the southwest of England. It has created a series of large biodomes in a disused clay mine in an area where there was previously not very much happening, was a disused mine. It's produced what they call a rich global garden. In fact, in one of these biomes, I was involved in this project during its design, and one of the difficulties was that the architect wanted to recreate the rainforest environment from the Amazon inside a biome. And for corrosion protection, this is not the best idea, and we had a big challenge with this. So these biomes were eventually constructed with batch galvanized steel, but we had the steel grit blasted before galvanizing to give a thicker coating, so the specification was higher than we would normally use for batch galvanized steelwork. This exhibition hall in Leipzig in Germany is also a very good example of another important message for architects, which is considering the design for galvanizing at a very early stage. This exhibition hall uses tubular sections. It is in fact an example of duplex coating. It was painted after galvanizing. But every part of this project was galvanized in a galvanizing kettle of 10 meters in length. Galvanizing was considered at the very first stage, and every component, even though it is a large structure, was designed for galvanizing. There were no surprises at the end to find that the sections were designed in lengths that were too long for our industry. And as I said, you have the benefit of galvanizing both the inside and the outside of the tubular structures, and then painting in a grey appearance for aesthetic reasons. Architects, as I'm sure you know, and if there are architects here, they, I'm sure, would agree, are strongly influenced by art. They are very visual people who have also to appreciate the technical realities of what they try to do. But we have found in Europe that their interest in steel sculpture has created a greater appreciation of what we can do with galvanized steel. So we've taken a greater interest now in some of the crazy ideas of architects who produce sculptures, produce steel sculptures. This is probably the most recent and largest example in Europe. It's called Exposure. It's also called the Crouching Man. And it's placed on the dikes in Flevoland in the Netherlands, and was designed by the well-known English sculptor Anthony Gormley. This comprises over 1,800 galvanized steel profiles, connected by 547 individual nodes, and it was completed in summer of 2010. It has received a lot of publicity, especially in the architectural community. Another interesting and in some ways amusing example is this singing, ringing tree. I hope that translates well for you. It's on a place called Crown Point in Burnley in the UK. It's a very remote area at the top of a hill, and this tree is constructed from 320 steel tubes, galvanized steel tubes, where the lengths are varying and they are divided into different layers, 21 layers, and it creates a large flute. These flutes are created by slots which appear in the structure. So when the wind blows, it plays a tune. You would not want one of these constructed near your house. Public buildings. This is quite a new project in Ireland, the Glucksman Gallery. It's another example where galvanizing has been used in a very high-profile and prestigious project. It's a new art gallery at the University College Cork in the south of Ireland, was completed in 2006. Again, you see the theme here. The architect has chosen the combination of wood and galvanized steel to create a so-called natural finish, again in the use of facades. The architect, in fact, wanted to have a project or a finish where the wood and the zinc would change their appearance over a period of time. And again, you can imagine that the close and detailed discussions between the galvanizer, the steel contractor, and the architect are needed in these types of projects. But these types of designs can be repeated for other high-profile buildings. And there are also designs where, as a result of that close collaboration, it becomes maybe not such a low-priced project for the galvanizer. Finally, I have a series of projects in the area of sport and leisure. Of course, I probably should not bring examples of football to Brazil. You should teach us about football. But I make a small apology for this stadium in Glasgow, in Scotland. It's probably one of our best examples of the practical use of galvanized steel in sports stadiums. We have the problem now that many stadiums are designed to make it very easy to see, which means no posts and very large welded structures. This means that for the main structures, galvanizing is rather difficult. But where we have a cantilever roof like this and a lot of external exposed steelwork, it's very difficult to paint these structures, and there is a strong justification for the use of galvanized steel, and the sizes are quite good for us. Again, a smaller example. This is a very small sports changing room on a local football pitches in the south of London. Again, a combination of wood and galvanized steel in a very durable, vandal-resistant structure with very low costs of maintenance. I'd like to come back to another example of the use of duplex coatings. This is the Pepsi Max roller coaster in Blackpool in the UK. You can see that for corrosion protection situated at the coast, this is a big challenge for corrosion protection, a very aggressive environment. So here the specification was to grit blast the steelwork to increase the surface area of the steel reacting with the zinc, and to deliver a minimum coating thickness of 140 microns, and then to provide additional protection, but also to provide the branding required by the Pepsi company of blue and red. A paint finish was applied using the correct procedures. An important use of galvanizing in Central Europe, perhaps not so important in Brazil or South America, is the ski industry, actually. A lot of steelwork is used to transport people along the mountains. This now has become also a group of structures which are influenced by architects. Architects are trying to move these from being utility structures to being structures that are pleasing in appearance. In view of the time, I will not speak in detail about this, but this is the galvanizado near St. Anton in Austria. Another nice example, Italian example, is the Cittadella del Vino in the Tuscany region of Italy. It's one of the largest winemaking centres in Europe. It's a 12-hectare site where galvanizing has been used very extensively, externally, as you see here, but also internally. You can see that galvanizing is used here, yes, for corrosion protection, but also for the durability and its resistance to knocks and damage. So if you are in Tuscany and you need an excuse as a galvanizer to visit a wine cellar, you can visit this one. If you like malt whiskey, this is a good example for you. This is the Rossili distillery in Elgin in Scotland. It's Scotland's first new big distillery for 30 years. It's 2 years old now. It can produce 10,000 litres of malt whiskey per year, and galvanizing again is used extensively in the main structure of the building and also the secondary steelwork. So this building actually houses a lot of active processes, the three main steps in making whiskey: mashing, fermentation, and the distillation. In the field of transport, we make a lot of investment in railway stations. I'm sure you do here also in South America. This is the new canopy for a Belgian railway station in Leuven, part of a general upgrade of the Flemish railway system. Here, again, it's an example of painting of galvanized steel, galvanizing for durability, painting for aesthetics, and almost all of the roof structure here is galvanized steel, then with a white paint for aesthetics. Similarly, in France, the Gare d'Orléans in Orleans in France, it's a new roof for the central railway station. Here, the only limitation was the size of these tubular structures, which eventually were zinc sprayed. So it was a spray with metallic zinc, and then a paint. Everything else was galvanized. And the final project to show you, another large one, is this acoustic cockpit, it is called, in the Netherlands. It's actually houses showrooms for a car company and other structures. It's a lattice framework, also provides some noise protection from the road, and comprises over 44,000 individual steel components and tubes. We have every 3 years an international conference where we bring together all of our knowledge and experiences in this and the technical aspects of our industry. I should just mention to you briefly, next year we have our 2012 Intergalva conference in Paris. Apologise for that small advertisement at the end. So thank you very much for listening. Sorry to go a little fast, to get back a little bit on time. It's been a pleasure to speak to you. And if I leave you one message, it's actually that we should not just convince architects about galvanizing and corrosion protection. We should also open their minds to the visual benefits of corrosion protection. Rust does not look good, but also for internal steelwork, galvanizing has advantages too. Thank you.
Murray, Eduardo Gomes, da Votorantim Metais. Achei interessantíssimo o uso da galvanização combinando com o cenário de céu cinzento no Reino Unido. Felizmente aqui no Brasil a gente tem talvez o privilégio de ter o céu um pouco mais azul. E o Frank Goodwin apresentou na palestra inicial alguns slides a respeito do uso de tecnologias para se colorir a galvanização. Não pintura, mas uso de sais que mudam a cor da galvanização. Estava curioso para saber como é que isso tem sido utilizado ou se há interesse na Europa por esse tipo de tecnologia?
Okay. I think two parts to my answer. First is a philosophy of mine from many years of marketing galvanized steel, which is that if we want to be competitive against paint, don't put paint on galvanized steel. That may be a big surprise to people that like the concept of duplex coatings, but we see still a lot of difficulties to reliably apply paints to galvanized steel. The theory is good, where our control is good, the results are good, but as soon as you put paint onto galvanized steel, you have to maintain the paint. So if you want to really take the advantage of the benefits of batch galvanizing with a thick galvanized coating, normally we can achieve all that is required for corrosion protection just with galvanizing alone, with zinc. There are situations, of course, where architects want color. I showed some examples of that. And it's very good to have in our portfolio of products the option to bring color to galvanized steel. But sometimes we paint galvanized steel where it's not necessary to do that. And the results can be the same legacy of maintenance that you had with painting without the zinc. Yeah? We can argue, does the paint last longer on the zinc? That's a discussion. Maybe it does. But you still bring yourself into a cycle of maintenance. The second question was specifically on the project that Dr. Goodwin mentioned this morning. This is a project which is really at the beginning. And the idea is to combine two things. One is a post-treatment for batch galvanizing with the opportunity to introduce some color at the galvanizing plant in a very thin coating. We do not know yet how successful this will be, and we have to think about where the market for that would be. But potentially in products like trailers, maybe some industrial products, not so much in architecture, but in industrial products, perhaps this could be, again, another added value product to add to our portfolio. But it's not going to revolutionize our market. It's my opinion. Yeah.
Silvia, da ArcelorMittal, eu tenho uma pergunta sobre esquadrias metálicas, né? Janelas, portas. Na Europa, a gente vê muitas esquadrias em aço e galvanizado, sem pintura. E aqui no Brasil é um mercado hoje praticamente dominado pelo alumínio. A gente ainda tem muita esquadria em aço, mas não galvanizadas, com pinturas, em uma arquitetura, digamos, com uso mais popular, né, E o grande mercado hoje do comercial está nas esquadrias de alumínio. Como que na Europa se usa esquadrias, perfis de aço e galvanizados, né? Como que está o desenvolvimento desse mercado?
Okay. Yeah. I think in Europe, this is not we are not part of the volume market. Again, I speak only about batch galvanizing of profiles for windows, for supports for windows and doors. We have a very good niche in this market for, again, architectural projects. I can think of some examples in schools, in accommodation for university students, where the robustness of just the zinc, just the steel, is very attractive. Yeah, nobody can damage this finish. That's a utility application, but also I can think of a store in London for Gucci, where they have the architect used galvanized steel in the door frame for the appearance. Nothing about corrosion protection, nothing about durability, just for the look and this rugged appearance. So we have some market there. It's something that I can imagine the cost of these special fabrications is much higher, of course, than PVC or from wood even. Yeah.
Ulisses da Arma Cristal. Eu queria saber como na Europa hoje a galvanização tem uma participação importante, muito maior do que aqui no Brasil e na América do Sul. Como foi o trabalho das associações europeias e do EGA no desenvolvimento do mercado? Simplesmente palestras ou atuação forte em normatização e trabalhando junto ao governo e as especificações no governo? Se teve um trabalho com profissionais atuando nisso.
Yeah. I think in asking the question, you gave many of the answers. Yeah? Standardization is certainly important. It has been very important in countries where standards are followed very closely, especially in Germany. In other countries, the closeness with architecture has been the most important. I would say standardization on the one side for industrial products and things which are decided by governments, and on the other side, it has been recognizing that in our associations we are not competing with other associations. We are competing with very large companies like AkzoNobel, International Paints. So we have to have the level of our marketing at the very highest level. We do not judge ourselves by associations in other industries. We judge ourselves against the marketing team in AkzoNobel and other areas. And yes, it's education. It's educating the architect through lectures. In some countries, you can make a seminar. In other countries, architects do not attend seminars. They are too busy. So you have to go to their offices and see them at lunchtime, buy them a sandwich, make them 20 minutes maximum time. It's always innovating as well. We have now the larger associations are developing online seminars, for example, so we can deliver education through the internet and all these modern techniques. So I would say the detail is different, actually, between countries. The common theme is the more you invest, the more you get back. And if you don't invest, very quick, you lose market share.
Oi, meu nome é Adriana, eu sou do IPT. Eu queria saber um pouquinho da Europa, como é que está o uso das barras galvanizadas na construção civil, quais são os países que usam mais, um pouco sobre normas. Você podia comentar, por favor.
I think the answer there is we don't. That's the short answer. We have a very small market for galvanized rebar in Europe. We would like it to be bigger. But we have a number of technical difficulties to introduce galvanized rebar into Europe. I have to say again, it's a personal opinion. I would rather see bad concrete construction and good steel construction to grow our market. One of the big weaknesses of concrete is the corrosion of the reinforcement, and we use this as an argument to increase the share of steel construction. So we don't invest too much energy, except in some small areas. In Spain, for example, there is quite a good market for coastal harbours and seawall protection structures. But in the rest of Europe, it's a very small market. We put some effort there, but it's not our highest priority in Europe. Yeah? I can imagine that in Brazil, you have more opportunity, because you don't have some of the old prejudices against galvanized rebar that we have in Europe. Yeah.
Silas Eduardo Inck, da Insight. gostaria de saber a diferença do custo de material do aço galvanizado para outros materiais em questão de porcentagens.
Is it possible for you to repeat the question? I did not quite catch it through the translation.
A minha pergunta é a diferença de porcentagem do custo de material do aço galvanizado para outros materiais, outras matérias de construção.
Yeah. Okay. Okay. So, if the question was how does the cost of galvanized steel compare to concrete construction, for example, is this the question? Or you asked the question about the difference between galvanizing and paint for corrosion protection? Maybe I can answer the second. The first question I cannot answer easily. Yeah.
Entre diferença de custos do aço galvanizado para outros materiais.
Yeah. Okay. So I cannot answer the question between steel and concrete because this depends very much on the structure and the building. I can tell you that the cost of galvanizing steel compared to the cost of painting steel is around the same when the paint specification is a good one at the first cost. Yeah. But this statement cannot be valid for all countries and all situations.
Thank you very much. Gostaria de agradecer, então,